Hey guys, it's your boy Eli from the Geek Centurions, here to give you another comics recommendation, and this is the week of September, the last week of September of 2019, so we go into October, so that was a fun note to say. And you guys mostly know me and Kelvin always like to talk about comic books, anime, and gaming, so we thought this was a good opportunity to do something very new, and that is to give you guys some comics recommendations. And there's a lot of stuff out there to read, so I took it upon myself, not to brag, not bragging. If I seem like I am, well, you can kick my ass later. But no, um, I wanted to give you guys something cool to read, something to. If you guys want to get into more comics, but you don't know where to go, this is what this part of the podcast is about. Is usually separate notions in their own little episodes, but they're usually kind of like little fun ones where I talk about why this comic is great, why I think people should read it, and help people get started in their journey into comics. So the first book that I'm going to be talking about is actually a Marvel book where we take the story of Spider-Man and do something really interesting with it. So most people have already at least seen the Oscar-winning Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, where we would see a Spider-Man from different worlds, different iterations, different styles, and one of the big characters in that film was Miles Morales, who is the ultimate Spider-Man. Ultimate as in he's in the strongest, but there's a reason for that. And I'm gonna get to that. So I thought the best book to talk about that would be this book right here, and this is a book written by Brian Michael Bendis and drawn by Sara Pichelli, and it is called Spider-Men. So I took it in the camera for the video audio watchers. You video watchers and you audio listeners don't really have to care about that. But the book is called Spider-Man. It is written by Brian Michael Bendis, Sara Pichelli, and essentially this is the whole point of the book is to see how Spider-Man, the mainline Spider-Man, Peter Parker, would react to finding his in a different world he had died, and all, and see how the world works that way. So quick notion, Brian Michael Bendis, who is the writer of this book, is actually the creator of Miles Morales. And he took it upon, he's one of the guys who started off the Ultimates line of comics. Well, so essentially what that is that Marvel wanted to come up with a new, line of comics where it would be easier for the reader who's never read books in these comics, who doesn't have to worry, who has a lot of worries about the long history of the Marvel Universe. So, guys know how Spider-Man's been around since like the 60s or 70s, and not having them to worry about all that history. And that is essentially what the Ultimates was. And they would always call it Ultimate something, the books would be. So, Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimate Hulk, Ultimate Fantastic Four. The Avengers, instead of being called the Avengers, they were called the Ultimates, which, yeah, it's kind of redundant, but you got the idea. This was a different universe. This was a different story, and a lot of the stories were made to be more modern and more, I would say, realistic to some extent. And they're always like this sort of interesting changes. Like you would see, like X-Men being kind of different. Like they were still X-Men, but they had like a different kind of origin. And I think we might use that in the film soon. Personal opinion, I think that makes a lot more sense. But it adhered to the same ideas that what these characters are, for the most part. And so Brian Michael Bendis was one of the guys to start off the Ultimates with Ultimate Spider-Man, where we have a young Peter Parker. He's doing all this cool stuff, and at some point he wanted to do something different, something that wasn't very common, and the fact that it was able to stick is pretty amazing. When that was to essentially kill off Peter Parker, and he went out in a blaze of glory, saving his family and friends and loved ones from the Green Goblin. He was still very young, and one of the things I really liked about what he did is that as soon as that after he died, they had a little memorial issue where everyone's reacting to Peter's no longer around, and that's when we're introduced to Miles. Now Miles kind of, if you've seen the film, it's kind of similar except here and there, but he does get bit by a different spider. He does have different abilities, and then Peter, and he doesn't have sort of a mentor. He's kind of at the roll with the punches and see how it goes. And it wasn't until say this book, Spider-Man, where he actually got a chance to meet a Peter Parker, not the Peter Parker that that has been in his world. And essentially, one of the reasons why I recommend this is mostly for the character interactions. The character interactions I feel are like one of the best things in this book. So, in the story, Spider-Man is fighting Mysterio, and Mysterio, kind of for whatever reason, I'm not going to go into it, finds a way to do some multiverse hopping. So he eventually jumps into another universe and do some stuff, and Spider-Man follows. And where Spider-Man lands is in the Ultimates universe, what they like to call it, or Earth 1610. I know it's a little geeky, but follow me with this, because in his Earth is Earth 616. But essentially, he's there. He sees some muggers. He stops them, and that is the first indication where like he knows something's off, because with the guy he saved said this to him, dude, it's cool, but I think your costume is a little disrespectful. That's like the first notion where something is wrong. Later on, he meets Miles, and essentially he starts to learn more about this world. And we get to one of the and I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but we're going to get to the one point in the story where I feel like it's the reason why I recommend this book. And before I get to that, one of the things that I want to talk about, and one of the reasons why this book is and it adds on to why I say this is a very important scene, this is a very emotional thing, is that Sarah Shelley was a great artist. I really love her art. Really captures it, like expressions and emotions. So for you guys who are watching the video, you're able to see, let's see if I can get it in frame, and like right here where Peter is, reacting to what essentially is his death, and she's able to capture so much emotion, despite the fact that Peter's wearing a mask, and you find like a lot of emotional moments and a lot of reactions, and you kind of need that whenever you need like to talk about something that is emotional. If your character is just standing there blank face, then it's not gonna impact the story. It's just like, I mean, he's not reacting to anything, then I'm not going to react to anything. But Sarah Shelley captures what essentially is you need to have an emotional story, is character motivate, along with the writing, is something like within the reaction, within their expressions that capture this sort of sense of, oh, this character is sad and all that stuff. You kind of need that in a way to let people sort of emote. And the important part of the book that I really want to talk about is Peter's inevitably eventually meets up with this universe's Aunt May. So I want you guys to remember that Aunt May, same stuff happened. Ben Parker is gone, but there's a little bit of differences. She's a little younger, and she was one of the people who was there when Peter died. And that was an emotional moment for her, along with Gwen Stacy, who in this universe doesn't die, and Mary Jane. So all the three important women in Peter's life are all together, and when someone dies, it takes a toll. And so, how do you think she would react to seeing a guy who is essentially looking like her surrogate son out in the patio? It's a very, and I'm not gonna get into how she reacts, but essentially this is one of the big moments where really touched me in my heart. That can be a bitch sometimes, I know, but it's one of the moments that I feel like really captures what I really liked about this book, and essentially is the character interactions. This whole thing takes like a whole book issue where Peter, Gwen, and May just have a conversation. and they're asking questions and all this stuff about his world, and seeing Peter seeing what this Gwen world is like. You know, it's a he's happy because Peter, you know, he Death and Wednesdays is a big thing for him. So seeing her in another world where she's happy, living a good life, she's happy. Like it fills him with joy, and it's the character interactions that I said are is the most fun part of this book. I love it when Aunt May, May Gwen is asking Peter all these questions, and she tells him some stuff like, "Oh man, you did this, this, and that. You went out with this person, you know, with this person." And Peter's like, "Really? That happened? That's weird. I don't see that happening." It's a lot of funny it's a lot of funny stuff going on, but it's also very emotional stuff, especially when it comes to Aunt May and Peter, because Aunt May was sort of like I said, her surrogate son, and to see that her surrogate son is now a grown man, because this Peter Parker, the Earth 616, the mainline Peter that we all know and love, he's older. He's not a kid anymore. He had a business. He did this and that. Well, not at the time of this book, but essentially, um, being able to see the son that you the child that you helped raise, the child that you basically raised, grow up. Even you saw him die, but you see what could have been, and it's a very emotional moment. And Sarah Pichelli, like I said, she really captures that moment. There's a page in which, like, upon realizing, she goes for a hug, and it's a very emotional moment. This is a woman who's lost a lot, and Peter essentially gives her closure. And it's the one thing that I really wanted them to kind of do in the film, in the Into Spider-Verse film. And it's slightly touched upon, which I'm not mad about, but oh man, I wouldn't mind another 30 minutes with just seeing her react to see her surrogate son alive, in a sense. But having what we had was pretty good. I'm not gonna deny that. So, stuff happens. Peter, gives Miles some words of encouragement, because Miles at this point kind of he's a little bit self-doubting, but Peter gives him a bit of advice and makes it a lot better for him. He ends up going back to the universe and stuff, but the thing about that I really liked about this book was essentially that if you ever wondered, the whole multi-reality hopping, how would someone react if they were in a different world, this is the book to go with. Because to see Aunt May, Gwen, and essentially Mary Jane, is she's in there too, but what happens to her, I think it's best to let you guys read. Um, it gives closure to characters that you probably aren't going to see again, especially in the Miles books. He occasionally sees them, but this is the best way for giving those characters closure. Seeing how the man they come to love become this sort of great hero. And we all know Spider-Man to be a very great hero, and you don't tend to see a lot of emotional stuff, or you don't really think of a lot of emotional stuff when you can think of comic books. And this is one of the books that I usually recommend where, no, there is emotional stuff going on in these books. You just gotta find them, and oftentimes they're padded with a lot of stuff, but a lot of the writing is there, and a lot of the stuff is there, and I commend Brian Michael Bendis for doing that. Being the writer for the Ultimates, he kind of goes with Miles and goes on his journey, but he wanted to give those characters closure, and I think he did that. And it's a very fun read, and I really enjoyed a lot of it. Yeah, so Spider, and it's a good start off to what essentially would be Spider-Verse, the event book that inspired the movie, which was a lot of fun. It's fun to see all these different spiders, people, and this is a good jumping off and good starting off point to give you the idea of oh, this is how Miles and Peter react. You can tell they got a lot of inspiration from this book, from the Spider-Verse movie, the Spider-Verse event book, and a lot of other stuff. And you can see that in this book with a lot of emotional stuff that I kind of wish they put in the film for Peter, but it was more of a Miles movie, so it's fine. So, let's talk about another character. And this character is actually, this book is the introduction to one of my new favorite characters. And so and it's really fun, and it's one cool book, and the art is just crazy out there. So the book I'm talking about right now is All New Ghost Rider. This is written by Felipe Smith and is drawn by Tradd Moore. So All New Ghost Rider is his new. So if you guys don't know Ghost Rider, he's you guys know Ghost Rider. We have two films of Ghost Rider, but the thing is, there's a multiple of Ghost Riders. You all know Johnny Blaze, but there's also Danny Ketch. The that one guy that was on the horse. He was Phantom Rider. Who, you know, the origin of Ghost Rider, the original Ghost Rider. And there's other ones that I'm kind of blanking out on. But the most popular one is Danny Ketch, Johnny Blaze, this guy we're just talking about right now, and this new guy who I would love to talk about soon. And it's Frank Castle, the Punisher. Punisher's a ghost. In an alternate universe, Punisher became a Ghost Rider with some cosmic stuff going on. And we'll be talking about him soon, don't worry. But the character that I want to talk about, he's one of my new favorite ones. His name is Robbie Reyes. And he's sort of this Latino Ghost Rider. So the cool thing though, the cool thing that makes him a little different is that instead of riding a bike, he rides a car. I think it's a Dodge 16, Dodge Charger 69, 69 Charger for Dodge and all that good stuff. I don't know much about cars, but I think that's the right name. But this is a great introduction to Robbie Reyes. You probably see him in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show for that one season. I think it was season 5 or 4. And they did a good job at that. They kind of changed a little bit of his origins, but they did a good job at representing who the character was. So, just to give you a quick rundown of what the story is, essentially, this is the origin of Robbie Reyes. You start off with knowing about his situation and his life. He's essentially a young kid who's living by himself with his brother. His brother, on the show, is just kind of, he's, bound to a wheelchair. In this book, he's a lot more worse, which is kind of interesting. He's still bound by a wheelchair, but he's also got a little bit of dyslexia and all that stuff. Not to make it sound bad, but his brother seems to get a lot of the worst stuff happen to him, is what I mean. But his brother Robbie, he's always there to protect him. Younger brother Gabe, he's in there being picked on for being in a wheelchair for whatever reason. I don't understand why they often do that in books. But besides the point, Robbie's always there to help out his brother, and he's just trying to make ends meet. And the one thing I really like about this is that you see how Robbie cares about his brother. And you see this living situation that he has to go through. He lives essentially in LA, in the barrios, which already tells you that he's not in a very good place to help raise a little brother. And one of the moments that really sucks to me is when there's a crime scene happening like in the neighborhood. Gabe, the younger brother, is like, "What's happening?" And to Robbie saying, "Just don't pay attention, just move along." It's just the usual thing. And you get why he's trying to work so hard to get out of the situation. It's a very relatable story for people that come from this kind of background. You try your best to get out of the situation, or you just become part of it. And one thing to note about Todd Moore's art, it is imaginative as hell. It is so cartoony, but done in the best way possible. Like one of my favorite things, especially from this volume. This is volume 1. Is that, and this is and I'm gonna show this out to the video guys, and for you audio listeners, I'm gonna try to give a great explanation to this. But essentially, if you ever seen, Fast and the Furious, give that sort of like an anime treatment and just go crazy with it. There's so many cool angles, so many like drifts and lighting, and it's just so imaginative. So this is one of my favorite pages, like a two-page spread where like they're all the cars are lined up. You know, you have your race chick going to say ready, set, go, and then you have all these really cool images of cars racing, and Moore's artwork is so, and it has so much energy, it has so much cool stuff going around, and it's really, really, really like crazy. So the image I'm going to show you off to the camera is Robbie first getting his powers, and you just see how explosive it is, how much energy there's going around, all these crazy lights and stuff. It's so, I guess the right word to say is anime. It's very like colorful, very cartoonish, and very fun. And it's funny how I say anime because quick interesting note about Felipe Smith is that he actually worked in Japan for a while as a Japanese comic book artist. He wrote his own stuff. I think it's called Pipocho. It's really cool. It's really fun. I've never really heard of like a guy who is not Japanese make some manga, but you know it's a really cool read. I should say check it out. But Felipe Smith, you know, he didn't draw this one. He did write it, but later on he does draw for one volume, and it's the character of Robbie. He writes it in a way where like you get his situation and you get why he wants to do it, and you get a lot of these super crazy things, and like it's very fast paced and very fun. So you know, usually, I really didn't say anything about his origin because Robbie's origin is really different from that of when you come to know of Ghost Riders. So you know, Ghost Riders always sell the soul to the devil, and basically the devil in this case is Mephisto. But here, Robbie just activates it. And later on we understand why, and you get this sort of sense of family. Like it's a family thing, and if you and seeing how Robbie is Hispanic, if you know who Hispanics are. Family is a very important thing, and you see that especially in this first issue where like all he wants to do is protect his brother, and you know make sure he lives a great life and get him out of the streets, as they say. But the thing I always liked about him was that sort of it was a good positive role model in a terrible situation who's always trying to do the best he can, and I could always gel well with that kind of story. And you see Robbie's life and how all this has affected him, all the stuff he's got to do, and he's kind of not really happy about it, but he has to do it because you know no one else will. And Robbie has become so popular that he's been on the new Agents of Shield show, a season for Agents of Shield where he was a prominent character. And he's recently jumped up to Avengers status. He's now a member of the Avengers. They're doing like a 3-part issue story arc right now. I think it's three. Right now in the Avengers that I just got finished reading a while back. When that's done, I'll recommend it. And Robbie is like one of the most fun characters you could read. He's really likable. You get his situation. You really appreciate him for being like a very good older brother, trying to take care of his younger brother. And as the story progresses, I'm just talking about the first volume right now. But as the story progresses, because I read all of them. I love this character. he's so awesome. I would get the same card just to make myself feel like Robbie. But no, it's he learns more about his powers. He goes through some of the stuff. It's kind of sad that aside from joining up in teams, he hasn't really get that much attention in like say solo series. I think aside from this one, he had one solo series in 2016, and he had this really cool moment in it was a tie-in to an event called Secret Wars, which I will get to, and that's gonna be a really long talk just for that one book, where you know he was like he's the leader of like this Ghost Rider stuff going gang, and you know he proves himself among the other Ghost Riders. you can see where they got a lot of inspiration from the from this book gives you a lot of inspiration for what you see in Agents of Shield, and I hope we get to see him in like the films, because just to see like imagine like the guy who does the Fast and the Furious movies, and give him like a real superhero, and a lot of crazy stuff like Ghost Rider is known for, and what that could mean. So that's gonna be really fun, real cool. But yeah, Ghost Robbie Reyes is probably one of my favorite Ghost characters. He's a really likable character. You get his struggle, and you know why he does what he has to do, and you get sort of like this bittersweet ending towards the end of the book. But I mean like his whole run. And Felipe Smith does a great job of writing this character. You know, it's a very simple book, but you have fun with it. And again, I say like, and especially with the first volume with a lot of its art, it's very cartoony and it's very like anime and fun. And you get a lot of like cool stuff like this, and it's so much a lot of stuff going on in this book just for art wise. Like there's so much stuff in each page, so many expressions, so many funny stuff, and it's a great origin story and a great point to start off for Ghost Rider. This all new Ghost Rider, Rider Ray's Ghost Rider. It's a good starting off point for someone who wants to check out this book. And if you want to find someone who is find like a minority character, that's your thing. This is a great place to start. But yeah, Ghost Rider, he's really fun. And so we got one more book because I couldn't find really that many books to talk about. It's not a DC book, sadly, but I do have one planned for soon. Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. But the book I have right now, this is an indie book, and it's a book that was recommended to me. So this book is called God Country. Now, God Country was written by Donny Cates, and this is drawn by, I just can only see his last name, Jeff Shawn. And what I really liked about this book is, well, for one, Donny Cates is like really big at this point. At the point of this recording, Donny Cates is like really big, really cool guy who's currently working for Marvel. He's currently writing the Venom books. He's currently at this point of recording, he's writing this event comic called Absolute Carnage, which I want to get to so bad. He's also written the Guardians of the Galaxy, Thanos. He wrote the Cosmic. He's been writing a lot of stuff recently, and I've been loving it. And so when I went to go to Comic Palooza, which is a comic convention here in Houston, that happens every like around May. Been going there for a while. The lady whose books I were buying, is a little, group that was selling books, comics, and I told her that I'm really enjoying Donny Cates' books. I'm really enjoying his Venom book, and I would like to see more of him. She recommended me this book, God Country, which is like I would say one of his starting off points. Now this is an Image book. It's not a Marvel book, but I want to talk about more about indies some time. But essentially, in God Country, it's I would say a 5-issue mini-series at best. 5-issue series essentially talking about sort of fantasy western kind of thing. So in the book, there's this family who called the Quinlans. They're in West Texas trying to take care of their aging grandfather. The father is. He brought his family over to help his aging grandfather, who is I'd probably say. Okay, now trying to remember the names of the characters because I'm blanking on them. Okay, Roy. Roy went back home to help out his father, who was suffering from Alzheimer's. But his wife, his daughter, and his father, whose name is Emmett, he's got Alzheimer's pretty bad. Like, it's really a bad case of Alzheimer's. And in the first issue, there's a tornado which houses a demon. And just follow me on this. And in that demon, lands on their home and attacks them. The demon's like looking for a magic sword, and the grandfather picks up the sword and kills a demon. And while holding the sword, it heals him of his Alzheimer's. And one thing about the sword is that it's like the most powerful sword ever, and has caught the attention of these ultra. Again, follow me. This is really out there. It captures the attention of these interdimensional god-like beings. And Emmett's not going to give up the sword. The grandfather's not going to give up the sword because it heals his Alzheimer's and makes the life for his family a lot better. But this ensues war upon these gods. And so it becomes sort of this battle of, you know, over the sword, and the sword can talk, by the way. But it sort of becomes this battle of who deserves to have this sword, and that's essentially the surface stuff. But once you get more into reading it, you start learning what the real reason what this book is about. And I'm not gonna get into it because I feel like you guys, those of you that would read it, would be very surprised at what happens. But no, Donny Cates sort of takes like this small idea, and makes it really big and crazy, and you can find that in like some of his other works like Venom and Cosmic Ghost Rider. And in this book, you know, it's very simple, it's very fast paced. You can get it done in a day, which I did. And it gets a lot of action, and it has this sort of Western vibe, and a lot of crazy magic stuff. And you come to really like the character, and there's a lot of character interactions between between each character. In the first few pages, you see Roy, the son's wife, saying we gotta leave. There's no point of us staying here. He's gone off too far. And Roy, the son, is like, yeah, but he's my dad. Without me, he's got nothing. And there's sort of this family bond that sort of ties into a lot of the story. And a lot of the characters are so much fun, and there's a lot of action pieces that you would not imagine a guy old enough to be someone's grandfather be able to do, but he's able to do it. And the art again captures all this crazy stuff, and it's so good. It captures that sort of scratchy, even gives a bit of a horror vibe with being surrounded by zombies in this 2-page spread. But no, the whole characters are likable. How it ends, I feel that captures the whole meaning of the book. And I feel like a lot of people are going to be like, it's too simple, it's too stuff. But this is a simple story that works. A lot of simple stories can work. And God Country is one of those kind of stories. So, the reason I recommend God Country because it's one of the best ways to get into Donny Cates. Donny Cates is a great writer, and he's easily becoming one of my favorite writers in the comic book industry. He takes like these sort of either simple storylines, make them crazier, and give them sort of a very meaningful resolution. And I say this book has all that. It has a lot of stuff that you wouldn't think would be like, you wouldn't think would gel well, but he makes it like fit together so perfectly. And you come out realizing, oh, wow, that was a great read. My only probably issue with this, and this is not an issue to Donny Cates. Donny Cates, I don't know what the issue, I don't know if this was his writing process or whatever, but I feel like it was like a little too quick in some areas. But it still works. You forget about that kind of stuff. It's so, well, it's fast paced, but you sit there and still enjoy the ride. It's one of those kind of films. It's one of those kind of books. You can even find that in some films. And Donny Cates does a good job with this. There's a lot of stuff in here. A lot of cool like fantasy stuff. If you're big into fantasy, you'll probably like this book because it's loaded with a lot of fantasy stuff. And it has that sort of vibe with like so I actually recommended this to a coworker who's trying to get into comics, and he told me it reminds him a lot of Cormac McCarthy. So if you like Cormac McCarthy, for all you literature geeks out there, yeah, I'm bringing some literature in here. Comics are literature, come on now. Um, he really compares it to those two. It's very much like that. He starts off with a McCarthy quote. So yeah, God Country's a lot. It's a great read, and it's like I think it was his debut. I think it was the first book he ever fully published with a comic book company. If this is the case, you can see where he started off with, and how he was essentially continuing to write. And it's amazing that in just a few short years, he's already writing for Marvel and already doing all this crazy stuff. So this is a good way to like get to know Donny Cates. And it's so much. It's a really great read, and yeah, a lot of fun action sequences too. So I think that's about it. I don't have any other book I can talk about at the moment. I have more books, but they're planned for like other days. But yeah, so like but those are my comic book recommendations. Spider-Man by Brian Michael Bendis, drawn by Sarah Shelley. All New Ghost Rider, written by Felipe Smith and drawn by Todd Moore. God Country. You can already tell. How are you gonna forget a title like God Country? That sounds like badass. Written by Donny Cates and drawn by Jeff Johns. If I were to choose one of these three for a quick read, I would go for God Country. It's so good, so good. Ghost Rider, if you want to be introduced to but there's a reason for each book. God Country, if you want to be introduced to a writer, how he started off with something new, something not related to like superhero, main two superhero comics. All New Ghost Rider, which is a great introduction to a new character for the Marvel universe. Cool representation and all that stuff. Spider-Man, which if you already know some stuff about Spider-Man and want to see how he does in with more Miles and stuff, go for it. That's the comic books I recommend for this week. It's a lot of fun and it's a lot of cool read, man. So yeah, next week there should be another one, comic book recommendation. And since it's the month of October, I'm trying to find more horror ones. I don't really think I have that many horror in my collection, but I'll find a way. Don't worry, I'll find a way. I'll find something to talk about. But yeah, that's been this week's comic recommendations. If you ever want to hear more of us, go check us out on SoundCloud. Well, not SoundCloud, Castbox. SoundCloud will be soon. Castbox, Google Play, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Those are the main ones you'll find us on. And we have a YouTube where you can subscribe to us and view more of our video podcasts. And I already told you guys where to find the audio. Castbox, Google, Spotify, and Apple. We're trying to get more out there. We have a Patreon. Please support us on Patreon at the Geek Centurions. Anywhere, just go anywhere and you'll find the Geek Centurions. Go to YouTube. If you click on the Geek Centurions, you'll find us. First thing on there. And a lot of cool stuff. So, yeah, it's been me, Eli, your boy, part of the Geek Centurions. And this is the end of this week's comic recommendations. Hope to see you guys next time. Signing out.